Next, we're going to move on to our 2 p.m. item, 6:15 on the agenda, and that's a presentation of update on Community Development Department Loan Repayment Plan. And that's going to involve staff from our Community Development and our Administrative Office. It looks like we have Director Turner, Deputy Director Shannon Walker-Smith, and Administrative Officer Casey Marino. And who is going to start this item?
I will.
We'll turn it
Maria
over to you
Turner.
to start that.
Thank you, Maria Turner, Community Development Director. On December 9th, when this topic was last before the board requested a number of deliverables that we have been working on diligently with the administrative office. Our meetings have been productive, and we are moving forward on achieving a number of those deliverables. One thing I didn't take into consideration, though, on December 9th was when the board was suggesting to come back today in mid-January, as well as making sure that we posted all of the materials for the public to access as well for our update. I didn't take into consideration the week of closed office for the holidays at the end, as well as our 2-week timeline for getting our agenda items in. And so what I'm hoping the board will accept today is an update on our progress that we have made so far, with a request to come back with a more thorough or final update on February 10th, at which point we can meet those agenda timelines for making sure that all of the supporting materials will be accessible on the agenda. And so we will continue with today's update. I will hand it over to the administrative office. Additionally, just so you know, one of the deliverables requested by the board was for County Council to speak to the white paper that was mentioned on December 9th, and they are prepared to do so as well. And that was also included in the staff report. So I will turn it over to Casey. I will turn it over to Shannon. Great. Oh, one last detail. Community Development started with the data, handed it to admin. Admin fleshed out their stuff, and by the posting of the agenda, the slides that mostly pertain to the administrative office's update got posted with the agenda, but CDDs needed some last minute touches. So we do have that PowerPoint, have forwarded it to Johanna, and we'll sort of be tag teaming on our presentation as far as slides go. Handing it over to Deputy Administrator Shannon Walker-Smith.
Thank you, Board, for the opportunity for this update. CDD will be presenting on a couple of your requested items today. One is the review of the presentation we made on the 9th and kind of where that data came from. There was a question about that. What's that? Okay. We're going to do an update on where we're at with our mid-year budgets, because that is informing a lot of our decisions, or we're also asking for some direction based on the mid-year budgets as we've been able to draft them with admin's help and support. And we'll also be talking about some of the unfunded activities that exist in each division. And as we look at fee analysis, some findings on that in a way that we're hoping to go forward to look at fees that would include some of those costs. And then we'll talk about our next steps, in particular what we plan to present on February 10th, should your board invite us to do so. So this first slide talks about the process that our accountant went through to get the data that was presented on December 9th. So he ran reports in Naviline, inputted the report information into spreadsheets, and then used those spreadsheets to graph the data that was on the presentation slides. And if you'll go to the next slide, Johanna, or I do it. Great. All of the data referenced in these next two slides are available, and we can post them as well for the public. So on slide 7, in terms of revenue earned, He outlines running reports on the revenue report for the last month of each fiscal year, and that's where that data came from. Slide 8, building expense allocations, was a detailed budget report. And then on the reserves, he used balance sheet reports for the first month of each fiscal year that shows where we kind of landed at the end of a fiscal year. And on slide 10 was basically a pull in from all of those other slides. So if there are any further questions about where we accessed that data, we'd be happy to answer that. And then moving forward to an update on mid-year budgets. So we have drafted all of our mid-years and they've been reviewed by admin. In the building division, we have removed all contributions to planning and code enforcement, including some legitimate expenses that we would like, I mean, not that others are illegitimate, but some expenses that we would eventually like to deliver back to this division budget once the budget is in better health, and that includes the building division was paying for a third of Director Turner and I's salaries, and we will reestablish that if the building division gets back into a healthy position. We eliminated the grading and stormwater inspector salary, where that position remains vacant purposefully. That was a contribution to code enforcement that was supporting that inspector position. All contributions to other code enforcement positions previously funded by building have been eliminated, which has included another code enforcement division that is now going to sit vacant. We were able to consolidate and move some officers around to be able to eliminate that contribution as well. The building division budget for mid-year does not currently include a payment to the loan in 25-26. We are currently looking at the first payment to be made in the beginning of 26-27. Specifically in November, as that is when we took the loan, if your board is open to that. And Casey is going to talk about repayment options. And the building division budget is currently balanced in mid-year. In code enforcement, a significant deficit was created by the removal of the building contributions. And in order to get that building back to balanced, that division budget back to balanced, we've reorganized code enforcement officers and coordinators into positions that are grant or program funded, eliminating all positions supported by building and admin, including the grading and stormwater inspector. We've worked with funders to adjust our grant budgets to account for MOU salary increases. We sure did. And currently, the code enforcement division budget is balanced. In planning, again, a significant deficit was created by the removal of the building contributions, and we had a recent resignation from a senior planner, and so we intend to leave that position vacant in order to help with the deficit in planning. But despite all of our work with admin over the last several weeks, planning remains, the mid-year budget remains with a significant deficit that we have not been able to sort out quite yet, and we will continue to work with admin for short-term solutions, and we will be seeking today some direction from the board on additional strategies, more long-term strategies. After this budget deficit in the building division came to light, our management team had a visioning retreat, and one of the things that we talked about was cost recovery and trying to look at all strategies that we could beef up or new strategies we could employ to help with cost recovery. And what came out of that, many things, but was a list of all of the activities that the department conducts that are not currently cost recoverable. And so we have listed those activities out by division here. I'm not going to read them. You guys can read. So this is the admin team in CDD is not its own division, but there is people across planning and building that act in this administrative capacity, meaning they kind of service the entire department. And these are some of the activities that they spend their time on that there's no cost recovery mechanism for. This is the list for the planning division. This is a significant list of items, tasks, and activities that our planning division works on regularly that there's no cost recovery mechanism for. This is code enforcement's list. This is the building division list. So we're currently looking at ways, as we're looking at fee analysis, which is one of the things that we will have prepped on February 10th, if your board approves, is to bring back a stronger fee analysis than we were able to
And we have a question from a supervisor.
So they're not recoverable, but some of these are related to grants, correct?
No. All of the things on these last 4 slides are all things that are not currently funded.
But if we go back,
Yes, some of them are connected to grants, but they're the staff support that is not paid. Like, for example, Lake County 2050, the ARPA funds that were assigned are getting paid for the supporting planning firm, the contractors. But the meetings that we're holding, things like that, where we're integrating staff,
Okay,
is
got
not revenue generating. Also, another example in code on the AVA program management, we do get AVA funds for the activities that take place, but not the administrative support. Because we delegate, we want to maximize the expenses to for actually abating those vehicles rather than quoting the administrative support, and we only have a finite amount of funds. So yes, so the examples here where you do see connections to grant activities, we're not talking about that part.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead and continue. Or Supervisor.
Yeah, if you could go back one slide. So I guess I kind of get it, but at the same time, I kind of get it, but it's quasi unfunded at this moment. I mean, if there's a cannabis abatement, I would suspect that we're going to be submitting a bill for somebody to pay for that abatement, the property owner. Now, they may not pay, and it may get placed on taxes, but in a way, it is recoverable. It's just not 100% sure that it will be recoverable. Same thing with the, substandard housing abatements. We do the same process. The fines are the time spent, and the fines are separate from the actual abatement. So there's different mechanisms to pay for. So I feel like this is partially quasi. Yes, it may not come because people have a choice to pay or not pay, but there are mechanisms that can eventually get us paid through the processes that are available. And then I saw the AVA program management. I know we've been changing the percentage, and you've been letting us know the time that has been spent from AVA for the financing, which is $20,000 every quarter, I think it is. So $80,000 a year. The 10% was supposed to pay for your staff time and also supposed to pay for the audit that comes out of that every 2 years. And we've adjusted and asked for more payments from the program participants when necessary. Are you telling me that you're not getting funded for that?
The admin percentage for AVA program management mostly goes to support the fiscal staff, but there's a lot of program management activities that take place in setting the agenda, the minutes, all of that, those items that we're putting in far more time that we're not able to recover from the AVA funds.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and as you're aware, the increase in the audit has, been substantial, and we've been very cognizant not to take money out of the pockets of the jurisdictions who are performing the work. So we have kind of shorted ourselves on the time that it takes to administer the program in order to keep the money going to TOES.
Can we have this sent to us, your attachment?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So in fee analysis, we're looking, which we will have something back on February 10th, should your board approve us to do so. We are going to be looking for ways to account for some of this, these unrecoverable tasks in the fee analysis that we're looking at. And so CDD is planning on February 10th to bring back some additional information you have requested, analysis of building division fees over the last 10 years, analysis of the Code Enforcement Division cost recovery, including, this is an item that we haven't really talked about, that we have a nuisance abatement fund also, 2604. And when we do collect lien payments or get money returned to us through tax default lien sales, et cetera, our admin time is all on one lien. And so it's been being deposited into 2604, and we need to figure out how much of that money should come back into the Code Enforcement Division budget. But because of the issues with the auditor trying to sort out tax lien payments and what they intend to claw back from overpayment, we are still kind of in the dark about what we can expect that number to be. And when we know that number, we will be able to bring in some funds from 2604 into 2603, and that will help with the Code Enforcement Division. Analysis of the Planning Division cost recovery and how it's going now that we have OpenGov. Analysis of CDD funding structures in similar counties, just for your and the community's information. And a fee analysis for Planning Division that will account for planning time not recovered in current fees, as I suggested on those previous slides. That is what we have for you today, and I'm going to pass it on to Casey Moreno for her presentation.
Were there any further questions while we're waiting for? No? Okay.
AJ, can you call me sometime?
You know who that is? I'm not sure.
Casey Moreno, Deputy County Administrative Officer. So working with community development on their 3 divisions, their main divisions. We have come up with this. So grant and program funded positions. The building division does not currently have any grant funded positions. The code enforcement division does have 2 in CDBG grant, 2 in the Copter program, which is funded through our cannabis fund, and 3 positions in Prop 64, which is for cannabis. And then for the planning division, there is 1 position that is funded by geothermal, which is the resource planner. So the planning division revenue, as you can see from the dotted line, it's quite a bit higher than the solid line, which is the actual amount brought in, which has not been too much of an issue because they have not been overspending, but their budgeted revenue is quite a bit higher than what is actually brought in. So I did a 10-year analysis on what has been brought in and what has been expended. So the solid green line is what has been expended each year, with the slash line being the actual revenue, and the tan block area being the general fund used. So in 1819, there was a slight amount of general fund that was actually returned to the general fund instead of being used. So it did dip down a little bit, and then it dipped down again in 22-23. So looking at that year specifically, the payroll did go up a little bit more than for fiscal year 21-22. But the most significant change was the amount of operating transfers that were being done in that year. Taking out all of those operating transfers, it would have been about 100,000 more than the prior year of 21-22. So those operating transfers really were pulled and came in, which decreased the amount partially on the expenses, but then on the revenue, it increased their revenue. So what ended up happening is that money came back to general fund, and it was about $350,000 because general fund budgets don't have carryover. So it came back to general fund. And then last year, 24-25, there was about 60,000 that was returned to general fund. Other than that, you can see each year they've been using some general fund. We do allow, on this next one, for the budget to be about 500,000, because going back farther than 10 years, that's about the amount that they've used or needed. Some years are higher, some years are lower, but 500 is about the average. So in fiscal year, 22-23, so the revenues came in about 600,000 less, but expenditures were only about 1.5 million less than what was budgeted. And so what happened was all of the transfers were made, even if they weren't necessarily needed. And some of those transfers are grant reimbursements. Some of them are from the building division, but they were all pulled. 23-24, that spike up is because of the PlaceWorks contract, which is funded by ARPA. Which is why in the following year, 24-25, the dip down because those reimbursements happened in the following fiscal year. So more general fund was used in 23-24, but then it was paid back in 24-25. So it was just the cross of the fiscal years is why that's so dramatic. But taking that out, those transfers, it was a steady increase, but not significant. The building division revenue is pretty steady. It has been increasing over the past 10 years. Budgeted and actual are pretty in line. There are some years where it's a little bit lower, a little bit higher, but that usually does recover. Looking at what was budgeted for 23-24, it was pretty spot on. And then now that we've closed out the books completely for 24-25, we're realizing that it was lower, the actual from the budgeted. Each year, this is just what was received for each of those years. So there was cash available each year, so the department did not feel any of these decreases. Okay, so this is the revenues and expenses for building. So the dotted line is the actual revenue that was received, and we can see that starting in 22-23 to current, it's been decreasing compared to the amount of expenses that have been happening. The bluish kind of bar line is the revenue minus the expenses, which shows that it has gone below zero a few times, but it does usually recover, past 3 years being the exception to that. So I combined code with building because until fiscal year 2021, they were combined. All of the staff were in the building division, and then it was split out. And so you can see that that's kind of when the building expenses started going up because they were paying over to the code enforcement budget. And then code has been increasing until last year it did decrease a little bit at the bottom there. So the transfers for the building division, so in 2021, code split. And so you can see those green bars there, which are split by the salaries and the contribution. And then prior to that, planning was getting a bit for the salary for the director. And starting in 22-23, transfers significantly increased, which also increased the amount of the reserves that were being used. So for the reserves, prior to 17-18, there was no money in the reserve. The last time that there were funds in there was in fiscal year 11-12. So after 21-22, admin had suggested that they start spending down those reserves because it was getting to be a bit too full. And so that's when those transfers also started happening to the other two divisions. Those started increasing. And so we do suggest that the division has a reserve, but only about 3 months worth of salary. So then that way they can support themselves if the permits start decreasing again. So 3 different options would be a 1-year, 2-year, and a 3-year repay. The 1-year repay, if it's by the end of this fiscal year, June 30th, or a full year in November, would be the full $390,000. The only way to make that happen is through staff reduction. Loan 2, or option 2 for the 2-year repay would be either a payment this fiscal year and next, or next and the following, at $195,000 a year. So this could be done through staff reduction, but also cost recovery analysis for all staff time. And then option 3 is a 3-year repay at $130,000 each year through staff reduction, cost recovery, and reorganization analysis. So just the MOU increases that went into effect on July 1st. Building division saw about $63,000, code enforcement at $95,000, and planning $105,000. So altogether, $264,000 was added.
Are those fully loaded?
Fully loaded. And then for the master fee schedule, we've been working together on reevaluating the hourly rate. And so how we're calculating the hourly rate is the direct costs, which are all the planners, plus the overhead, which is all the admin positions, the expenses and direct costs, divided by the billable hours. So we take the hours and take off holiday, vacation, sick leave time that staff are not here. And then that gives us the hourly rate, which can then be multiplied by the number of hours it is to complete each task, which with OpenGov should make it a lot easier to calculate that. So our staff recommendations would be to reduce staff. And so we looked into MOU 3, 4, and 5. So the initial probationary employees are the first to be laid off, followed by seniority. Talk to other departments to see if they have an opening for a lateral position. Also working on the hourly rate to include the MOU increases and unfunded mandates and projects in the master fee schedule. So include those. Budget creation, we're going to create a more conservative budget, which will expand as revenues increase. And position organization, we're going to look at restructuring positions within the each of the budgets. And that is it.
Any further from staff?
That last slide, the list of options are not listed in our order of preference. Our team is all working at capacity, and we would like to keep all of them, but we recognize that we have to present all options for the board to consider.
Okay. Questions?
So I wanted to express our appreciation to the administrative office team. Casey has been wonderful. Stephen, when he's not dealing with other countywide crises, has also been present and participating in those meetings. And there have been a number of instances where I have realized that I did not know what I did not know. And so Casey's expertise has really helped to fill in some of those gaps. So I just wanted to thank them.
Thank you. Supervisor Sabatier?
Yeah, just a quick question. 2 different presentations. Why?
As I explained in the introduction, we were finalizing our slides, but admin was done with theirs just at the last minute when we had to post the agenda. Ours were finished shortly after that. But our accountant was continuing to do work to make sure that the information that we presented you was the latest that we had.
Okay. It just,
It was our original intention to create one synthesized PowerPoint presentation, but timing did not allow us to do that.
yeah. Appreciate the response. I was expecting a team presentation coming back to us, so that's why I had to ask. Just
Having two separate PowerPoints is not in any way an indication of a lack of unified effort.
okay. Can you put up your slide deck, please, Ms. Moreno? I just want to share a couple of concerns. Well, one of them that I noticed, and it's in your, I got a download of all your expenditures for through our auditor controller, and the AVA is inside the building department. There's some sections that show AVA quarterly 10%. I just want to make sure that if we're going to do any kind of movement, let's make sure to move everything out of building that has to do with AVA. I don't know why it's there. Maybe because back in the day, everything was combined, code and building, and it just stayed there. I don't see all that much activity, but it's strange to me to see AVA activity inside the building. And I want to make sure that building is its own building division and it makes sense what's there. If it's toward the latter graphs, it's about the expended, right there. Yeah. So this one, we'll hear from county council based on the white paper at one point here, but this one really concerns me in the sense that I don't mind if there's some unfunded mandates out of the building division so that you're looking at the building division as a whole and you're deciding what the cost of the hourly fee for the services will be based on everything that building is supposed to be doing. But to support so many other divisions, when I'm coming in saying I'm building a house and I want to pay for a permit, and we're struggling so hard to build houses, and there's enough funds there available to support code enforcement and planning when all I'm doing is building a house, I'm struggling to swallow that. And I'm trying to figure out, I guess, at what point I should have asked or I should have been told, because we've been talking about the struggle of housing for so long, and yet that's how much housing is already supporting other divisions. Like it doesn't match. If it's so important to build housing, then maybe we should have reduced the price, because I don't think, in my personal opinion, my colleagues may disagree, that I should be supporting code enforcement because that's for violations, or I shouldn't be supporting the planning department because I'm not building a subdivision, I'm not building a development, I'm just building a house. So I'm struggling with that level of information. So I want to make sure that our the duties that are being identified in the expenses and revenues of planning of building is truly just building. Let's make sure to take anything out. I understand of reviewing the fees, but I personally don't want to see these things mixed into it if it's from a completely different division. In my mind, I see it as a completely different department in the sense of I'm building a house, I shouldn't be paying for someone else's whatever their project might be, a strip mall, building a manufacturing development, whatever it is. So those are my two big things. And I guess I'll have to wait further until February to get more information. And I'm looking forward to the context of the white papers as well from County Council.
Supervisor Owen?
I did have very much along the same lines. I had some of the questions. I know that there was an article in Laco News today, and basically they were questioning what else is our building department subsidizing? Are we subsidizing the code enforcement? Are we subsidizing the planning department? And that's what it looks like we're doing. Are we subsidizing the cannabis projects? What else are we subsidizing? And I don't know if you have any any breakdowns on how much of it went in other departments, but I feel that it's disturbing to know that we are charging as much as we are to build a house, and it's going into other departments. So it was very much along the same lines as what Supervisor Sabatier had mentioned.
Go ahead.
So in response to the question about just building fees in general and whether or not we would increase or decrease, what you're going to find out on February 10th's presentation, this is a little bit of a preview, is that during that same time that reserves were creeping so high, another action that was taken was a decrease in fees. So both the decrease in fees and the spending of reserves has contributed to the problem. So I don't have it in front of me, of course, because we're prepping this for the next presentation, but
Is that when we dropped from 3% to 2.6% of construction costs?
correct. So that also contributed. And so we have not increased fees to support this activity. I'm going to let County Council talk about the legalities of it, but to reflect on Supervisor Owen's comment, subsidies do happen and it's the case that the building division was subsidizing planning and code enforcement activities. There is a breakdown that has been provided between salaries that were being contributed and contributions, which is basically towards operating expense.
And will we be getting those as well?
You have them.
Oh, okay, I didn't see.
Yeah, they've been provided a couple on the 9th and in Ms. Moreno's presentation today as well.
Okay, thank you.
And that in looking at fee analysis studies across neighboring jurisdictions and other formats that jurisdictions are using, typically fee analysis does call out what the subsidy on the expense is for any county fee. And we don't have that here. I think we'll work towards that for our fees, showing what the total cost is and then what is being subsidized by either general fund or some other source. But the subsidies that happened to planning and code divisions were kind of in substitute of subsidies that likely would have occurred from the general fund. So that was a decision that was made back in 22-23, and that we've moved forward with that as kind of the structure until now.
Mr. Carter, did you have a comment?
Stephen Carter, Assistant County Administrative Officer. The only thing I wanted to add to that was regarding to subsidizing all the other divisions, not departments, is that code enforcement officers very much should be, not all of them, but at least 1 to 2 should be paid by building. Absolutely. That's part of building and what goes on, as well as 1/3 of admin staff. That absolutely, because it's for the entire CDD department. So there should be some money going to wherever those FTEs are held. That doesn't mean the entire amount should be there, but there is plenty of legitimate and money that should be transferred between the divisions because of what staffing is doing for building. Just
Thank
not
you.
the entire amount.
Thank you. Was there anything further, Director? No?
Well, I have one more follow-up on
I'm
that.
going to go to Supervisor Crandall first.
I just had a quick question. You might have said it. I might have spaced it. With code enforcement, I think it's data ticket. Is that what they still use? Are they? Is there how much in fees have they been collecting?
That's what I was going to ask.
This will be part of the next presentation as well, but we have, in this fiscal year, we have about $500,000 that has been cited, and we've brought in about $13,000 so far. But this will be the first year that we'll also be able to use the feature that Data Ticket has that allows us to put the citations that remain unpaid to the Franchise Tax Board to collect when tax payments are made.
So that's catching up basically now.
Right, well, that will be, yeah, in the spring, we'll hopefully start to see some payments that will come in through Franchise Tax Board action.
Thank you.
And that was your same question?
That was my question. I believe I'd asked it
Okay.
last time as well.
Okay. So
Yeah, and we'll have a lot more detailed information on code enforcement, cost recovery efforts, and where we're at with those at the next presentation.
Thank you, Supervisor Pyska.
Yes, And I know it was listed in the non-recoverable, but we do have the zone of benefit too, that used a significant amount of staff time that was not recoverable based on everything that we now know about that program. And I know that that was pretty significant in the 2020, 21, 22. I think that there were really significant years for code enforcement using or not being able to recover those funds. And we still have a significant amount of those funds. And I know our HOAs are on standby, waiting to hear what the next plan is. And I know we have a director in the room too that's going to be part of that conversation. So I'm hoping that we can come back, we can kind of look at that too. Because as we know, with that program, it costs more than just to abate. Admin fees are significant, and we're seeing that across the board as they relate to grants and as they relate to non-recoverable expenses. So if you could just kind of expand on that a little bit more too in the next presentation, that would be really helpful.
Yes, we are working to schedule another meeting with the interim director of Public Works. He's been a little busy lately, but we will continue to reach out to him for availability as Shannon and I start thinking of the fifth plan, that maybe how we can see the end, the finish up of the benefit assessment zone funds.
Okay. Looks like no further questions from the board. I'm going to open it up to the public. And we have somebody approaching. Please state your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, Tom Lasik, Lajcik. Thanks to the board. I said it last time. I'm going to just repeat it. You know, mistakes this big don't happen by mistake. I have a problem with the problem, and I also have a problem with the proposed solutions. My problem with the problem is it seems that every time we have a meeting, it's worse than it was before. In November, we were told, well, it's the building department needs more money, and then you were told it's because of the wages. Then you were told, well, it's seasonal, and then you were told, well, it can be fixed, and by the end of the fiscal year. The next meeting, well, it's not wages, it's not seasonal, it's going on for 3 years, and now we find out it's not just the building department, it's planning, it's code enforcement. And the question, I think, Supervisor Owen, what else is getting subsidized? I know that when we had the conversation about the pause for cannabis, a few of us, including myself, mentioned it looks like this being subsidized. And we said, oh, no, it's not being subsidized. Well, I'm not so sure anymore. I think that all needs to be looked at, and it looks like you're starting to do that. My problem with the solution is that the unfunded information is not quantified. So how much is each one of these things, PRA requests, et cetera, that's not being discussed. In the Planning Commission hearing, when this was briefly mentioned, it says they had someone that was leaving and they weren't going to replace it because of the cost recovering, but they were going to hire somebody else. So how much of this is we're only seeing one side of the conversation and not the full picture? This is largely a staffing, almost 80-90% or more is labor. And normally when you have bloat, which is what this is, you have to reduce staff. I also, with respect, Supervisor Owen, you didn't ask last meeting, how much was paid. You asked how much was paid for cannabis, and you were told $500,000. And now we're finding out that the $500,000 covers all of the fees, not just cannabis. So you weren't given the answer to what you were asked. And I would also remind this board that the prior year when that was asked, it was near zero. So it is still a non-answered question. So I hope that when you have this meeting next month, you get better quantification, you get real answers, and it focuses on staffing. And I do agree with Mr. Sabatier that you can't be subsidizing building permits the way you are. that's not broken out. That all needs to be measured. This is going to be hard work. It's going to be painful, but it is a staffing issue, bottom line. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else in the room? Seeing none, do we have anybody online, Johanna? Nobody online. I'm going to close public What was that?
We just got one iPhone 13.
iPhone 13, we're going to unmute you. If you could please state your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Carla Lewa, Pillsbury Family Farm. And I just wanted to let you guys know that the frontline staff within community development matter. Many of them seem to be capable, and many seem to be committed to public servants who seem to show up every day trying to do their jobs under difficult conditions. This comment is not about punishing staff. It is about leadership, accountability, and direction. What is inexcusable is the pattern of overspending and the mission drift within CDD. The planning department exists to process permits, ensure code compliance, serve the public, not to function as an investigative arm, not to chase social media activity, and not to access criminal background information that lies outside of the role of county planners. When planners are directed to act as investigators rather than planners, something's gone seriously wrong with the leadership level. And I ask the board to consider a few basic governing questions. How many senior planners were reassigned to tasks unrelated to the land use planning? How much staff time was
Sky, I want to stay focused on the budget portion of this, please.
Who authorizes these priorities? It should begin with the leadership review again, and I urge this board to consider appointing an interim department head from the county administrative or allowing qualified senior staff within the department to step up on an interim basis. It would stabilize the operations, protect institutional knowledge, and send a clear message that fiscal responsibility and the proper scope of authority matter. Malejo.
Thank you. Johanna, do we have any more hands on Zoom? And I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to the board. Supervisor Sabatier.
So I think we had the initial conversation early, mid-November, if I remember correctly. That's when you first came to us asking for a loan. So it's been about 2 months. What I would have liked to see today is what's changed. Here's what our expenditures look like. Here's what our expenditures look like now. Here's what our revenues look like. Here's what our revenues like. I don't know if you're in better shape today or if things are continuing as far as 2 months later after you stated that you had internal things you were going to change, like freezing certain purchases or whatever. I don't have anything to let me know if we're doing better 2 months later into the year. So now we are approximately 6-7 months into the entire budget that we've provided. In November, you asked for a loan in order to take care of your payroll and other things. And I just there's nothing here to give me an update on the status. And so I would love to see that in February, because to me, I don't have a plan here unless I need some numbers. Reduce staff, what does that mean for the numbers? What I really see is a plan to increase rates. And that's a little bothersome, because that's the easiest thing that we can do is we're missing money, let's ask for more money. And so we have an hourly rate review, a reduction in staff, but I'm not understanding. There's obviously no direction to give today, because there's nothing tangible that I can say this will solve the problem. What I would like to know is, it was brought up, and I appreciate that it was brought up, because it's been a constant growth for the department is to put out the fines. I think maybe I'm being exaggerative on my statement. I feel like the bad actors that we deal with are burdening those who are trying to be good actors, in the sense that if we're not getting paid back by those who aren't getting permits, those who have code violations, for those that, all of those folks that abandon vehicles, everything that you as a full department have to deal with, if we're not putting down the hours and saying, this is how much staff time we spent, and this is why we're fining you this much, which we can place directly through the franchise tax board if we wanted to, and direct ticket. Abatements, different pathway for those. But if we're not applying everything that we do, because I've seen code enforcement cases come to us where it says 8 hours. I'm like, it's been going on for 18 months and you're telling me you only spent 8 hours? Like, there's no way you put down all the time that you've spent on this bad actor that we didn't get compliance in. On the other hand, if we get compliance, we're not going to make somebody pay for the time that we got because we want to give them the 30 days to come into compliance, which doesn't come with the fine. So there's always going to be a little bit of a balancing act between the general fund and the other stuff. But I want to see, where are we at with abatements as far as putting those on properties? Where are we at with fines and making sure that we are really doing our due diligence to not subsidizing work on bad actors, and that the bad actors are the ones paying? And that goes for all the divisions, period. Are we also, because I know this was a problem at one point, and I think it was more of an Excella problem than anything else, is we were not asking for those that were looking for use permits or other things to pay for all of the hours that were spent, because we just, again, weren't keeping track or record of all the hours spent. Are we invoicing for that extra time being spent? And so to me, those are the important numbers to better understand what is being recommended and what is going to solve the problem. I don't want to lay people off, but at the same time, we have to figure out how to do this in the correct way so that we're not taking the easy way out, but we're doing the right thing in the way that we're going to progress and have a sustainable future for the divisions that you have and your overall department. So I will share, I'm a little disappointed that there's not a little bit more information. I get it that there's the holiday, so I'm going to look forward to February. And I'm going to make one more statement, and I'm sure there's going to be a little bit of daggers coming out of people's eyes here. Supposedly this is 3 years in the making of the reductions, and we've been told, I think, that you had warnings that your budgets weren't looking healthy or weren't looking good, and yet we do a budget as a team, and we are proposed these budgets, and nobody has given us a warning. Nobody gave us a warning in September. Nobody gave us a warning in June, and there's a lot of eyes. And I'm wondering why there was nobody that said, this may not work. Now, I failed. I missed it. But someone else also failed to let us know that these conversations even happened. And so how do we solve that where everybody speaks up and say, hey, the department really wanted this, but I would advise you to take a look at this, because we only know what we know. There's always going to be something we don't know, but at the same time, there's so many eyes involved in the budget process. How did the Board of Supervisors not know that you may be cutting it very close when it comes to this? Because it happened way too fast. And in conversations I've had internally, there were warnings that were given. Well, I never got those warnings. I'm sure most people here never got warnings. And my question is why? And there's no need for an answer because I don't want to put anybody specifically on the spot, but why? And I think we need to change that. I think we need to have an overall dialogue as a team and not just feel like one department or one group should take the lead and that's it. That's all we hear from. We should be provided all the flags, all the warnings, all the information to make the best decisions here as this board. And I feel like I have not been provided all the information, and I usually dig pretty deep for some information. So I hope we change that. I hope you come back with a lot more details.
Anything further from the board? My question would be, just to confirm, when you're coming back in February, it's going to be a team effort again with admin and CDD?
Combined.
Okay. With that, be ready for action.
If I could just add
Yes,
one
please.
last bit. Supervisor Sabatier made a bunch of really good points, and I can address just a couple of those. Our intention is not to steer you towards increased fees or versus layoffs. Our intention is not to be hyperbolic in order to manipulate the board towards one effort or another. But what I am hoping will come out of February 10th is a much more robust discussion about the cost it takes to provide the services. Historically, even when I was sitting in Johanna's chair, and the master fee schedule would come up and community development would approach that board, which was, multiple supervisors ago, always there was resistance to raise fees specifically for planning. And always with the exact same rationale, which still holds true for now. Where is that point where we're going to discourage development because of the fees that we're charging? And so what I would like us to consider, or just have the board hold in the back of their mind, is that when you have a certain number of staff performing a certain number of services and the costs are going up and we're not raising fees, that means we have to derive this chasm that is increasing between revenue and expenses has to get fed by something. So that's why right now, as the preview for February 10th, it's looking like, well, we either raise fees or we're laying staff off. We are looking at cost recovery, but one of the options that are going to be on your plate are taking a look at this chasm, where it has gone in the last 15 years, while we are hesitant to raise planning fees to make sure that planning is achieving sustainability. In the last few years since I started here, that's why the deputy administrator position was created, was also to look for ways to achieve sustainability for planning. We've done so looking for grants. Grants have really helped code enforcement, and that's why you've seen in our slides that a number of the code enforcement have gotten off of general fund and are now grant supported. That's really helpful. However, the planning grants that are out there at the state or federal level support long-range documents. The planning grants, the housing element update, updating your zoning code to comply with SB2, blah, blah. All those things are for specific projects that are not usually revenue generating anyway. But not a lot of grant opportunities for operating day-to-day expenses in planning, even for non-revenue generating activities. So I am looking forward to a robust discussion with the board regarding recognizing if we do not raise fees, well, what are we doing? Do we want to reduce services, or do we want to recognize that full sustainability and weaning off the general fund may not be an option in the immediate future? That's what we're looking for. So we will have that data for you, because our goal is not to force the board into some uncomfortable position at all, but rather to supply you with the detailed information that you need in order to make your decisions. Additionally, we are already using OpenGov to attempt to capture time spent that exceeds the time that was assumed within the planning permits. We do have one that I just have off the top of my head, because the dispute was sent in to recognize or justify the time. And with the OpenGov, each time entry has had a detailed explanation for that time, so we will be able to defend that as these disputes come in. So yes, OpenGov is already helping us to make sure that we are capturing and recovering that time for our permits.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Supervisor Hahn?
Yeah, and actually, I'm glad you brought up OpenGov. That's exactly in the direction I was going to be asking. Have been under the impression that our building permits have went down, where we're not receiving as many of the building permits, therefore not quite as much revenue. And then we started the OpenGov in 2025, which was supposed to streamline and make it easier on staff to reduce the hours. So therefore, I was kind of a little bit concerned, because prior to that, we had an abundance. We had almost $1 million in our reserves, and now we're kind of putting them out into all the the different areas, and it should be that you said that we're in a slump, we're not building quite as much, so therefore the revenues have dropped. But hasn't AI and OpenGov helped us to kind of streamline it and made it easier for our staff and quicker?
I am very conservative in how I allow our staff to use AI at this point. We are following the county policy. Some of our planners have been innovative but mainly in communications, not necessarily writing our staff reports for us. Because I know you know, the planning staff reports are very complicated and accuracy is important. So we are not using AI to generate staff reports. If anything, they're helping to make sure that our communications are hitting the right nuance and the right tone, while we're still making sure that our communications are
With the OpenGov.
OpenGov has been very helpful in that tracking. Not that it takes less time to do a permit, but it helps in more accurately capturing the amount of time that is required.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Anything further from the board or possible action? Supervisor Sabatier.
I was hoping we can hear from county council about the white paper on, and I know that there is a portion in the memo, but basically, I'd love to hear from county council, but I have concerns about moving housing dollar revenues into planning or code, or even a different situation where this was stated to us during the request for the loan of collecting between January and June and using that to compensate for the losses from July to December, if that can be discussed.
Sure, and I'll try to be brief. So, because much of the information is already on pages 2, I think, through 3 of the board staff memo. That contains much of the information as to the legalities of, and I separated it into 2 categories. My office did separate it into 2 categories: the adoption of fees and then the expenditure of collected fees. So, the question that came out to your board back in December 9, 2025, came under a scenario: how a developer in March can pay a fee that helps repay for October salaries, as an example scenario. So that can be answered in 2 phases, and I've categorized it as such. The first one is adoption of fees, and the second part is expenditure of fees. Both have different standards, to say the least. The adoption of fees is generally subject to the what they call the Nolan test, Nolan-Dolan test. You see that at the bottom there. There has to be an essential nexus, has to be rough proportionality. Explains it. The memo itself cites it in more detail. But that is the standard to be used for your board to determine whether or not to adopt a proposed fee. So you have the essential nexus test and the rough proportionality in order for your board to make an informed decision of whether or not the proposed fee for these services would match that. Now, once the board adopts its fee schedule, then we get into the expenditure of whatever fees that were collected after its adoption. So just in a nutshell, in summary, and I've laid out the case law, we've laid out the case law here, that there is some flexibility there for your board on the question of how to spend fees that were collected. There's been cases where there was a surplus situation in one department, and it was the County of Orange versus Barrett case. The court found that the county could use its surplus fee revenue to cover reasonable and necessary costs of the services instead of lowering the fees until the entire surplus was dissipated. In another case, the court ruled, and I think this was in San Francisco, long-range planning is sufficiently related to the regulation of building construction to justify the spending, such that fees can fund broader planning activities if directly related to a building regulation. So those are some of the cases that have had holdings that are related to our situation here. But that being said, it sounds like, and it's been touched upon in this discussion, it sounds like much of the concern may lie with the first part, which is the adoption of the fee schedule. And your board certainly has discretion to amend its fee schedule, further revise it, as you've seen, at least annually, where it's presented to your board. And just in summary, again, going back to that question, how a developer in March can pay a fee that helps for October salaries, your board has, when it comes to the expenditure of collected fees, your board, the county, has discretion through either policy or the budget appropriation process under the government code to manage its own expenditure of revenues from said fees. That also means that it does go in front of your board for approval. And you've seen that play out time and time again for board approval for budget appropriations, certain budget transfers. There's some flexibility there. It's just the Nolan, just to conclude, the Nolan-Dolan test applies to the adoption of the fees, where it also gets presented to your board for consideration and approval.
Thank you, County Council. Supervisor Sabatier?
And without going into a big discussion, I agree with the statements you've made. I disagree that it matches with what we're our behavior. Like if you want to say when you pay for a permit for a house that a portion of it goes into the next future housing element, or a portion of it goes to the long range general plan for the next version of it, that's fine. But if I'm paying for someone else's house, I just have big problems with that. And so I just want to make that statement.
Thank you. There's nothing further from the board. Do we have action?
It's just direction.
Action.
Yeah.
Direction? So I believe, from what I heard, we had consensus for bringing this back on February 10th. Was there was an amendment possibly? Or did you have further, Supervisor?
Just a quick question. You and I and anyone else who has been on First Five, when you look at our budget in First Five, it says, here's what was budgeted, here's what we've spent so far. I'd love to get that type of potential status of where you are with your budgets when you come back to us to better understand what exact are we in that? Are we in 6 months where we should be 9 months, or like where are we in the whole expenditure of things?
A year-to-date report.
Yeah, a year-to-date review. I'd really like to see that.
I'm okay with that.
And I know it may not be as of February 1st, because that's really hard to get all the way up to date, but whatever it is that you can bring to help us understand your current status in compared to where we started.
Anything further?
And I think you guys said, or you all said that the time spent with even code enforcement, but everything else, you would have that more available during the next session anyhow, right?
If you mean the non-revenue generating activities, yes, I am going to assign
Okay.
time
Right.
that costs.
Any further questions of us? No, then I think we have consensus, and we'll go ahead and close this item. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.